All right. Well, welcome everybody to the technical presentation on Silver47. Myself, Gary Thompson, and we have Dr. Quinton Hennigh here.
How are you, Gary?
So yeah, we're pretty excited to, I guess, meet the milestone of our listing, soon to be traded on the TSX Venture under the ticker AGA. So yeah, you can see this deck on the website, silver47.ca. I guess let's get into it. Capital structure. And so we've been, I guess, around since 2021. You can see the numbers on the left that we've raised, I guess, about $10 million to date since 2021. And a good chunk of that money was spent on our original project in the Yukon called Michelle, which we've made a pretty substantial silver discovery. And most recently raised about 5 million at 80 cents, really focusing on our Alaska project called Red Mountain. So you can see the shareholders, Eric Sprott, obviously management, a lot of skin in the game, and with Crescat support, we're well positioned. At the year end, July 31st, we're sitting on 4 million cash. So at the 80 cent mark, that puts us at about a 40 million market cap with 50 million shares outstanding. So 80 cent will be the trading price out of the gate, which we're anticipating targeting basically next week, which is the November 12th is our target for trading. Any comments on that, Quinton, or should we just move on?
Look, it's a tight shareholding. Company's off to a good start with some cash in the bank. I think this is going to be a very important start for the company because, it is exploration in Alaska. Need to build that kind of support to have the horsepower to tackle a project like Red Mountain.
So just a little bit on the team. Myself, been I guess pushing 30 years now in the business. Alex Wallace is our VP Exploration, north of 15 years, international experience in resources. Kevin Chen, our CFO, and we have two independent directors, David Netherway and Ryan Goodman, with lots of mining experience as well. So the strategy for us is really to grow our resource. So we have two zones, the Dry Creek and West Tundra Flats, that make up the resource, and we want to rapidly accelerate that growth. In addition to that is we look to make new discoveries, really focus on the silver, copper, gold part of the story. And we think we have an opportunity here to fast track to a development milestone. One thing I want to touch on, and be good to get your thoughts on this, Quinton, is the polymetallic deposits and why they're great. And I just have a couple points here. Is really polymetallic deposits really help to normalize the price volatility that we see in various commodities. And at the end of the day, they help to drive the economics and ultimately higher margins than perhaps a standalone commodity. And what we do know about silver production is about 70% of the world's silver supply comes from these polymetallic mines, as only about 30% are primary silver mines.
Yeah, look, it's very very important to have that kind of multi commodity, especially in a deposit like this. You need precious metal in there as well, and this one's well endowed with silver. So having a combination of base and precious metal is good. It means the project can thrive through times when markets are favorable for precious metal as well as economic times when they're more favorable for base metals, and we see that being a key to success of a lot of VMS deposits in particular. Massive sulfide deposits such as Greens Creek, which is also in Alaska.
Yeah, and I remember some comments from Hecla on that actually, that when silver prices were depressed many years ago, the lead and zinc really paid the bills. So you can weather those commodity storms, if you will. I think a couple interesting points on the silver market is obviously we're in this pretty significant deficit, 240 million ounces and growing. And at some point, silver's got to go ballistic. I think we're seeing certainly some big moves in silver in 2024. Um, and obviously, silver being the highest electrical conductivity, I think any form of electrification in society needs a lot more silver. And what I find interesting is the emerging demand coming from AI. And I know we didn't have AI in the last sort of metal boom. So I think AI is making a pretty significant component of the demand. And of course, we're seeing a lot more uses in like the battery technologies and these silver zinc and silver carbon batteries. So as of October 25th, we did a select peer analysis and came up with you can see the chart and the table below what's showing as silver 47 basically taking our market cap divided by the silver equivalent ounces in the ground gives us 24 cents per silver equivalent ounce in the ground. And relative to our peers, I would show that we're basically on the low value end comparatively.
Yeah, I'd also point out that the silver space in regards to M&A seems to be heating up. There's been two major transactions just in the past month or so. Gatos and then let's see, Silvercrest both sold, and they sold for pretty good premiums. I think PNAV was something on the order of 1.9. So we're seeing the market pick up. I think demand for silver deposits is going to increase over time, and I think this could be one of these stories.
Quality silver names in a good jurisdiction are getting a premium is a takeaway. It's a little bit on, I guess, the projects. Again, we started in the Yukon and on the Michelle project. You can see our substantial silver discovery hole there in the top, 15 meters of 907 grams silver, plus almost 30% lead zinc. Pretty substantial. And then we picked up some ground in British Columbia called the Adams Plateau, which is also a SEDEX VMS type district play, earlier stage, but nonetheless some pretty significant silver samples up to 4,000 grams silver and some meaningful historical drilling, 4.8 meters of 348 grams silver. But the main focus for us is going to be the Red Mountain VMS deposit, which we have an inferred resource of 168.6 million silver equivalent ounces as of January 24th, and obviously hope to grow that rapidly. So the commonality is we're in this SEDEX VMS environment for all the assets, and obviously focusing more on the silver gold part of the story. But be good to get your thoughts on just these types of deposits a little bit. We are in this similar environment here, and we do see some similarities to Eskay Creek here too.
Yeah, look, Red Mountain has very good, very strong precious metal grades, both in silver, even in gold in places. So that's a really nice addition to any VMS. What also attracts me to Red Mountain, I've always liked, is the age of the host rocks. A lot of the host rocks here are similar in age to the host rocks that host a number of other VMS deposits in this general region, including the ones to the north of us at Arctic and Bornite, and then over off in the Yukon direction at McMillan Pass. So, you know, we are in elephant country. These rocks, they're mostly Cambrian Ordovician all the way up through Devonian age, and they host world-class deposits. So I think at Red Mountain, what we see is a relatively early stage project that's already built up a good resource base, but with a huge amount of exploration potential attached to it. There's a lot of targets need to be tested here. And I think at some point in the next, not too distant future, we should see it grow to similar scope of McMillan Pass or Arctic and Bornite.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Just a little on the VMS mining camps. I guess one maybe is missing here is Kidd Creek, because Kidd Creek also produced pretty meaningful amounts of silver out of Kidd Creek. But this slide is really just showing the scale of some of in a comparison to Red Mountain. the scale of some of these historical mining camps, and some of them have been running for 100 years or more. So important deposit types. And you can see the Noranda and LaRonde as some of the largest gold accumulation of any VMS camps. So they can have a lot of precious metals to them. And, that's really going to be our focus, is honing in on or daylighting some of that precious metal enrichment that I think the previous operators maybe never focused on. So we'll talk a bit more about that. So generally where the location is, we are almost 100 kilometers due south of Fairbanks. Right now, it is air support to the project. When I flew in there this past summer, it was a 20-minute flight out of Fairbanks. There's a couple of airstrips. We stayed at the Wood River Lodge, which is just south of the claim block, and we're looking at upgrading the strip and building a new camp at the Newman airstrip, which is on the sort of northeast part of the block, which is closer to the actual resource areas that we plan to advance.
Yeah, look, it's important to point out it's actually reasonably accessible in terms of exploration. I mean, this is a country where there are airstrips available. There's also roads not too far away. Healy's just off to the west there. This isn't a super remote country. This is pretty reasonable when it comes to exploration, and you're able to get the support you need.
Yeah, and I guess the west end of the block is only 30K from the road and rail, which is down to the Anchorage port. But also there is a trail there, a state managed trail, and it's important to note that we are on state managed lands, which is really supportive for mining. So we think there's a pretty clear path to improving that trail and ultimately into a road with not a whole lot of work. So I think we're in good shape. Maybe just to touch on the resource, but I guess we can get into that on the next few slides. But on January 24, we published a 43-101, 15.6 million tons at 335.7 grams per ton silver equivalent, providing that 168.6 million silver equivalent resource. So pretty encouraging, good grades. And I see this as kind of like, basically it's like equivalent to a 2 million ounce gold deposit at 4 grams. So to me, it smells a lot like SK Creek 2.0 when they started. Yeah, a lot of numbers here, but I think the takeaway really is the combination of West Tundra and Dry Creek. You can see the numbers here. Now, I should point out that in our equivalent calculation, we did use some of the recovery numbers that we had. There has been some metallurgical work done. So the recovery estimates are using those sort of 70 to 90% recoveries. So they're based on recovery estimates on some of the initial metallurgical work. So we have not done any metallurgical work. That's something that we're going to do as we get into this project. But I think the numbers are pretty conservative.
I'd also point out that in terms of metallurgy, the sulfides here are fairly coarse grain compared to a lot of EMS deposits, especially like the ones off in the Yukon to the east. What does that mean? Well, the coarser the sulfide grains, the easier it is to grind and liberate those grains from one another. So I think, although the work has to be done, I think just geologically, it looks like that it should be feasible to make clean concentrates here. That test work will prove it, but that's my early stage guess.
Yeah. Now we did come up with an exploration target for the Red Mountain project. So we have this pretty solid resource base. And if you look at the 15.6 million tons, based on the previous JORC resource we had, which had 270 million silver equivalent ounces, which was an unconstrained resource. And basically, we've got some really broad space drilling. We think with a decent exploration program over the next season or two, we can claw back a good amount of that. So we think it's not a big stretch to get to this 50 million tons. And using that similar grade at 300 to 400 grams silver equivalent, it puts our base case at about a 500 million silver equivalent target. Obviously, the 75 million tons we think is that's a stretch target, but it's certainly not too far out there in context of the size of the project and the many targets that we have even yet to drill here. So just getting into the details of the project, you can see the scale, 60-kilometer trend. Most of the work that's been done to date is really been focused on the eastern side, on the resource areas, the Dry Creek and the Western Tundra Flats. That's where most of the drilling and exploration work has been done to date. But what we're recognizing, and from some other works that were done on this area, is that we have a more VMS affinity on the eastern side, but more SEDEX affinity as we look at some of these western targets, like Sheep Creek and Horseshoe, have much thicker horizons and more of a SEDEX, which haven't really been drilled much, but certainly prospectivity is quite high here. You can see the numbers there, pushing 38,000 meters to date on the resources. And I guess just the other note is that we're fully permitted for drilling. And this is one of the reasons that we got intrigued by this project. When you start looking at the drill holes and the resource, you can see on the left the Dry Creek. I'd say reasonably well drilled and fairly tightly spacing, shallow. But as you get deeper and stretched out from it, lots of spacing. But if you look up at the on the right here in the West Tundra Flats, still really broadly spaced holes. So I think lots of room to improve the resource and expand it and really just tighten that up. And some pretty impressive previous drilling, 6 meters. You can see the numbers there, 409 grams silver, 5 gram gold, over % copper, and meaningful lead zinc. So 6 meters of 2155 on a silver equivalent. So these are the kind of holes that really pique our interest, and can we get more of these? Obviously 5 meters of 1200 grams silver. Love to drill a lot more of those, and that's what we're gonna try and do. Again, just some select intercepts from the historical drilling. And you can see, I don't know, pick any one of those. I think there's a pretty good handful of impressive silver gold hits, and that's one of the things that we would like to do is really focus on improving that precious to base metal ratio. It is a base metal district for sure, but I think working on more of the silver gold targets and trying to improve that ratio would certainly be attractive. And then so we put together a couple slides just on the regional, mostly the focus really on the eastern block, which has most of the work. And you can see for silver, there's some pretty good numbers coming out of here. One of the targets that we spent a bit of time on this season was the Galleon, which is north of the main resource area, that had a 1265 gram silver surface sample, what seems to be fairly shallow dipping strata there. So I think there's some more work to do fleshing out the silver on a regional scale, but certainly lots of targets to chase here. And you can see on the bottom here, 2,500 rock, almost 8,000 soils, and north of 15,000 XRF samples. We know XRF doesn't work great for precious metals, certainly for base metals, and it's been really helping guide the exploration. And here's a similar map looking at copper. You can see how it starts to light up. There's a couple areas that I think need some more work. There's that copper anomaly up there by Galleon that shows more copper. So there's certainly lots of areas that haven't seen the focus for copper. And if you look at the zinc map, really lights up on the zinc. You got to look at the scale again on the bottom here, 8-kilometer scale bar. So pretty tremendous mineralized system here, and I think it's just going to take some time to flush out some of these targets and get the boots on the ground and really get the drills turning.
I'd also point out you got a lot of EM conductivity anomalies there too. Those are the small circles that you see here and there. There's a lot of targets along strike from Dry Creek and West Thunder Flats. It's easy to conceive of finding multiple target or deposits like that, and that's how this thing's going to grow.
Yeah, I kind of think of these things as like a string of pearls. Is it one big giant deposit? Doesn't look like it, but it looks like a series of these clusters or string of pearls along the trend. That seems to be what we're seeing. And certainly we know that EM anomalies can correlate quite well with these types of deposits. And some of them, a lot of these have not been drill tested. So I think it just provides to the prospectivity of the project. Just a little bit more on galleon. Hasn't been a ton of work here, but you can see some of the silver numbers that are coming out of some of the surface sampling. We do have a drill pad built on this site for next season, and so this will be one of the first exploration holes outside of the resource target areas. And now jumping way over to the west, this is an area that I visited in my tour this season. Was an area called Horseshoe that pulled some pretty interesting silver and gold numbers from surface sampling. And what I thought was impressive was the thickness of the horizon here. The exposure was north of 50, 60 meters of semi to massive sulfide that has not been drilled. So this looks like a pretty easy target, basically set up at the top of the hill and get some holes into this. So this is another one of our exploration targets for the next season, which could provide some scale to the targets. And Sheep Creek, this is one of the historical drilling that was done again on the sediment SEDEX hosted style mineralization. And I thought what was intriguing was not only some high silver numbers coming out of here, but a uniquely high tin, up to 1.2% tin over 2 meters reported in one of the 1977 holes. So some more work to do on this target, again, similar to Horseshoe, potential thick horizons of polymetallic mineralization.
Yeah, it's not all that most people don't know it, but it's not that uncommon to see tin in VMS and SEDEX deposits. Sullivan is a SEDEX deposit, had considerable byproduct tin, and then Kid Creek, classic VMS deposit, also had significant byproduct tin.
Yeah, and I should also add is because there's significant lead in the system, we do get fairly high antimony numbers as well, and in some cases quite high. So that'll certainly add, I think, as a byproduct. Critical mineral antimony is becoming quite a hot commodity these days. I don't know if you have any comments on the black smoker stuff, just general, Quinton.
These are pretty typical black smoker deposits. That said, like you said earlier, there's some that have a clear volcanic affinity, so they're VMS and sensu stricto, and then you have others on the property that are probably more distal expressions that are more closely associated with sedimentary rocks and appear to have more of a SEDEX affinity. That doesn't bother me too much. You see a lot of places around the world, especially in this age of rocks, where you can see that kind of association. Great example would be Ireland, the Irish district, which has both VMS and SEDEX deposits, displays a lot of similarities to what you're looking at here. You're going to see these things occur in districts, so you got multiple deposits in either case, SEDEX and VMS. You're going to see a cluster of deposits, almost universally VMS and SEDEX occur in camps. There's been two major discoveries here on the property, but I think with the targets you're seeing, I would not be surprised to see a whole collection of these things pop up over the next couple of years.
Agreed. And I just pulled this from Mercier and Langvin on just the gold-rich potential of these VMS. As we said earlier, they can have pretty meaningful amounts of precious metals. So that's something we still need to look at, and how do we fit into this story? We're not yet sure where we plot on here, but just to point out that just a reminder, they can have pretty meaningful amounts of precious metals. So look, I think in summary, we're pretty excited to launch this story. We have a solid starter resource of 168.6 million ounces silver equivalent on an inferred basis. And we think there's explosive growth just on that resource, and working towards a much larger exploration target on a discovery-rich district-scale polymetallic project. So pretty excited here.
Yes, it is. It's also good to see this project get resurrected. It was in the hands of another company prior, and like a lot of companies in the past 2 or 3 years, they simply ran out of money. In this case, we're hitting this thing right as we're going into what appears to be a bull phase, certainly in the silver space, perhaps more broadly in the metal space. We're starting to see prices of metals like zinc and stuff, increase here recently, copper included. So this could be the right timing for a district like this. It could be a period where you can have sustained exploration that really catalyzes that growth to say a 500 million ounce silver equivalent target.
Yeah, pretty meaningful. And I think the near term catalyst for the company, obviously a listing just around the corner. We've got some drill results from 2024 to publish, and obviously we're pretty keen to get back to site in the spring of 2025 for an aggressive drill campaign to really grow this resource and make those new discoveries. So stay tuned for Silver 47 and have a look at our website, silver47.ca.